Going live. Okay.
All right. Apologies for our meeting starting a little bit late. Technology is wonderful when it works for us the way we want it to. So we will call this meeting to order of the Woodford County Board of Education on September 20th, 2021. Let the minutes show that all members are present. 3 members are present in person and 2 virtually, as well as our student member is here with us. Ms. Cooper, are there any public comments? All right, hearing none, we will move forward, and there's nothing I can skip Ryan for, so we'll go ahead and let him do the instructional, equity, and task force updates. I know. Sure, and if you guys can let us know if you can hear okay.
There we go. So those of you on screen there, hopefully you can see this. Mr. Chenoweth, can you see that? Thumbs up. Okay, very good. I apologize, a little small here, but for my instructional update, I want to celebrate 27 days of instruction. Today. We'll take what we can get, right?
Yeah.
So just a few pictures to go through, courtesy of Miss Elaine Bailey. Some of these have been posted already on social media, but just a few examples that have gone on over the past 27 days. Young elementary student there with a fantastic mask she's wearing. There's Mr. Reynolds, Mr. Beatty with a Southside student. I think they were doing a news production of some sort. And then we have a freshman physics class with their rocket launch preparation. There's the first scene of it. And then here is your second scene. Good job by Elaine and her photography here to show kind of the 1, 2, 3 launch there that took off out there in the football field, practice football field. A few more I had. There's an example of an elementary classroom, I believe that was kindergarten, where everyone seems to know the answer. Whatever's being asked there, all hands up. There is Mr. Lewis. Engaging students as he always does so well, and just a sidebar for him. I don't know if you saw his recognition recently. Very excited and happy for him. And then there's Ms. Calmes in a 2nd grade classroom over at Simmons. And then finally, just a few more to wrap up. There's Mr. Howell. Again, these were probably posted. You may have seen these. He was a guest speaker, I guess you could say, for September 11th in high school classroom. There's a young lady. That's just a great picture overall. I believe that must be going into Huntertown, it looks like.
I think that looks like a Rockwell painting.
Yes, it does.
That is so pretty.
Very, very good work by Elaine once again. And then finally, that's a middle school picture there where they were taking a tour in the hallway. Some instruction going on over the first 27 days. And just wanted to take an opportunity to show those off once again. Beyond that, in the first 27 days, we have recently completed our first round of assessments. That is MAP for grades K through 8. All of that window is closed, so now that the data is back, we actually held our district level MTSS meeting as well as the school doing their school level meetings just to figure out, okay, now that we have this back, what are we going to do? In a number of cases, that means you're setting up small group intervention and instruction to respond to that data. And just making sure that structures are in place to do that, both schedule and human resources really to help meet those needs. And then also, this is bringing this back to the high school level. They had done this several years ago. CERT is their assessment. If you have high schoolers, you probably know this. And they recently did that for 9th through 11th grades. Also on assessment, just so you're aware, K-Prep scores will be released next week. That's part of the school report card release on the 29th. It is a part of that. We talked about this last spring when we were taking this. There's really honestly nothing to compare it to because K-Prep was different than it ever been before, even regardless of pandemic. It was shortened for that reason at every grade level, and also was the first time that it was taken online. So there's really going to be no comparison. Obviously, it'll be one data point, just like MAP and CERT that I mentioned, to help inform us on where to go. But just want to give you the heads up that is coming out next week. So that's the first 27 days in person there. I did want to update you on WAVE, our virtual option. At elementary level, we're up to 15 current students. At middle, we have 11. And then at our high school level, we have 71. So we have grown from a bit from the last time that we met. I believe I addressed this, but at the high school in particular, we have closed that. We are 27 days in, and using Edgenuity, that time racks up, so to speak. So that it's a good percentage, not only percentage, but that percentage equals hours of seat time. So we are no longer have WAVE open for high school. We have discussed opening, this was the plan initially, that you would be able to apply for second semester if you were interested at the high school. And that application will come out probably in November. Give us some time to go through those applications, review those, and then prepare for second semester. We're just monitoring elementary and middle at this point. Those numbers are relatively low, 15 at elementary, 11 at middle. On whether or not that would continue into second semester, we are just watching the situation. We're also monitoring their progress. As I've mentioned multiple times, it's much more independent on the student's part and the parent's part. So we have meetings scheduled, structures in place to monitor their progress through those, just to see if it's working. And then whether or not we have that in second semester is determined on that, and just determined on by circumstances as well. You know, we thought it would be post, but we're still obviously late pandemic still. If we are able to, we may close that down for the second semester, but we have a couple months here to help us make that determination. So that's our current virtual update.
When are you hoping to make that decision?
Probably the same time frame of November would be a good time. That gives us a couple weeks here before fall break, all of October, and then hopefully have more information all around to help us make that decision. I'll stop there. Any questions on the in-person that I've covered or the virtual?
Yeah, can you send us the K-Prep results when they're available to
Sure.
be shared?
Sure.
And thinking about having the MAP data point, obviously we don't need to have a data session. That's something I don't think our new board members have been with us for one, but kind of maybe keep that on the horizon of when it's appropriate to have enough data for us to sit down and look at all of the criteria that we used to look at.
Sure. Would that be maybe after our second round?
That would be I'll defer to you on that. I just keep that on the kind of horizon as something that we do need to do.
That would allow us to show a benchmark, a starting point, and then growth that has occurred during this semester, basically. Because we typically give that, 1st November, 1st of December, I think. Somewhere in that neighborhood?
Yes.
So for our newer members, we usually have a data session where we go through the testing results for each individual school, and there's lots of different breakouts and demographic categories that they show us what growth has been achieved and things like that. It's a very informative meeting, but with not having adequate testing, we haven't been able to have one since you guys have joined, but look forward to having enough data to get that back on the schedule.
Sure.
And I'll say that, with 20, we've not missed a day yet, and our attendance runs between 91 and 93%. I mean, it's almost where we would have normally been. Now, bear in mind, that's with our quarantine codes. But still, I mean, for us to be able to maintain that type of attendance, we've got a lot of good things going on as far as mitigation in our schools.
Go ahead.
Anyone else have any questions for Mr. Asher on the instructional part?
This is Sherry. I could not hear the superintendent very well, so I don't know if it's just me or if the other online folks are unable to hear him. So this may have already been covered. But as part of the data session, could we also talk about ACT scores, career technical readiness, the different technical programs, GED graduates, just kind of all of those data points?
Yep. and the kindergarten prep and all of the things that we have covered in past data
Yeah.
sessions. That's all.
Yeah.
Just,
Essentially
just our
K to
data
12.
in general would be great,
Okay.
Mr. Asher.
Sure.
Yeah, there's just so much more than just the K-Prep and the map, and I do think that those meetings can really hold a lot of valuable information about the district and about what we're doing, for the whole child. So maybe you could even cover some of the different tiers and the supports and the numbers there, those kinds of things too, please.
Yes, ma'am.
Last thing under instruction wanted to cover is just our teacher prep that we are doing. We had our new teacher induction program going last year. Much of it was virtual sessions, so making it a priority, just like we are with our students, to be in person with that. So the first new teacher induction program kicked off last Tuesday. Sandy Adams leads that under Dr. Jones' direction and my involvement just a little bit. Had them for an hour and a half, and what we do is, I've mentioned the Big Rocks many times, and that was my message to them. The reason that we do this is regardless of circumstances, that we have these foundational pieces, these Big Rocks, we have a thorough understanding of those so that we can latch onto those, follow those through whether it be pandemic or not, that they are that important. And then the second year teacher program will actually kick off tomorrow. Now we weren't able to do that last year. We had to let some things go, so we focused on first year teachers. So we felt like we could pick back up with those that were first year last year, and then they would do the second year program this year. That's a little less intensive. There are just 2 sessions, but it also comes with a 6-week coaching cycle with their mentor. So we're reinstituting that this year. In regard to equity update, I always say this because it just lines up that we just met before this meeting. We were able to approve 3 diversity projects. I've mentioned that for several months now, that's been a long project in planning with WEEF. We had 3, one from the middle school. They're doing a World Travelers Club, and then 2 book clubs at 2 different elementaries. We'll do another, I'll send that out once again. Want to target in particular some clubs here at the high school and potentially at the middle school. See if those club sponsors, leaders would be interested, and send that back out again. Also under equity, we recently completed our final module. I've mentioned those several times, so that's the 5th and final module. We did that with our principal and lead teacher, and then it's going to work out very nicely. We all came to consensus as part of that training that would be delivered to staff on the November 1st PD day. Module 5 does an excellent job of kind of tying it all together. You do look at data broken up by the demographics, by ethnicity group. So it does a great job of that, of digging into your school level data in that regard for its culturally responsive classroom management. And so that'll be done on November 1st. Also, we decided, this just came from teacher interest. Ms. Kirk from the middle school forwarded me an email from a teacher asking if we were going to do another book study. We discussed it as an equity team and said, why not? If there's interest, that we certainly will do that. So it's going to coincide right with that November 1st that we'll send that out again if folks are interested in participating in a book study. We have several titles that have been used before. The equity team, I've asked them if they have any others they'd like to recommend to send those my way. So a Google form will come out right around November 1st to see if folks are interested. Our timeline, we thought, is collect those and then right at the break to get those titles in their hands and give them a little winter reading material there to take home. So that's the equity update.
Is that just staff, or is that students as well on the book studies?
It has been staff to this point, some board members as well. And we have not opened that up to students, but that could be a possibility, particularly at our secondary levels.
Yeah, and if it's a virtual meeting and
It
just
is.
for those students that, would like to participate, that might be a neat option.
It is. Our timeline on that is for our October meeting. We're going to come back, look at our titles we're offering, but I could certainly bring that to the group as well.
Great. And so finishing that final module, is that bringing our contract with Dr. Banks to an end?
One more piece, which all of you will be involved in, and that's the CQ assessment. Remember, you took assessment 1, most of you. You two will take assessment 1 while the others are taking 2. That will be done in December. We usually open the window for a week to 10 days where you take that assessment online, and then January timeframe, maybe into February, we'll look at the interpretation workshop, and that will be the final part of our contract with her.
Okay. Any other board members have any questions about the equity update? All right.
No, I would just say I'm very, very thankful for the WEEF collaboration, Ryan, and all the work that the equity team and that you have done with that. It just is very telling about what a wonderful community we live in.
I agree. Thank you. And it's a good group to work with, as you know. We had some great discussion. Some things I didn't have on the agenda were brought up, and we've got a good team of folks to talk through that and how we want to address that and get out ahead of things. So it's a great team we have put together.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we will move into the regular agenda for tonight. I think there's some travel requests that we needed to approve urgently tonight, Mr. Atkins?
Yes, ma'am. We had our Woodford County High School cross-country team traveling, our Woodford County High School academic team traveling, and our Woodford County High School FFA traveling, or not necessarily traveling, but having to make arrangements for travel, either register for the conference or pay dues as far as they're traveling as a team to compete. So with that being said, I can't foresee in the future anywhere that the governor will place another travel restriction on. I think certainly if Florida is still wide open, then certainly there will not. I can't foresee a travel restriction. However, Ms. Bailey has written I guess you would say a caveat to travel, stating that in the case that there were to be something that would cause the travel dealing with COVID or just really any type of an incident, it's almost like we're saying we really don't have travel insurance. But we will do our best to refund any monies that were given, that were taken, especially at the district level. We'll take care of that. Now, we may have, I think Mr. Wells had some issues last year with a trip that maybe they had paid for through maybe a travel company, and the refund wouldn't come. But at the district level, I can assure you we'll take care of that. So with that being said, I would recommend that this travel be approved to allow our students to compete.
Okay. Ms. Sharrock, will you be attending National Convention?
Yes, ma'am.
Awesome.
Okay. All right. Is there a motion to approve the travel requests?
So moved.
There's a motion by Ms. McHale. Is there a second? There's a second by Ms. Glass. All those in favor say aye or raise your hand. Aye.
Are you guys able to hear me now? Is that better?
That was better, thank
Good.
you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, the motion passes 5-0. We'll move on to the planning session and review the board agenda. Mr. Martello, would you like to do the treasurer's report and the August financial report?
Yes. Good evening. I know we've got a pretty lengthy agenda item down the road on the working budget, so I may go through this one quicker than usual. So for the recap of August, for the treasurer's report, again, same three reports that we look at briefly: the monthly expenditure and revenue, the balance sheet, and the cash balance by fund monthly summary report. If you'll turn past the monthly expenditure and revenue report and go to the cash balances by fund, just one item to note: we did have a number of dollars come in for revenue on activity for the tech program, insurance program. So that was a good thing. We collected a lot of fees in the month of August, which is a great thing. On the balances for the other funds, fairly similar. Capital outlay, you'll notice that at the bottom there, that $910,000, that's still the balance that it was in July, because we got that first capital outlay dollar amount from the department in July. We'll get the other half later on in the year. Okay. Any questions on the first page?
On the capital outlay, that's the amount restricted. Do you have an anticipated amount on the 20% that will remain in that fund?
It'll be 20% of 370 something thousand. So
$75,000.
yes, for about the 20% portion
Thank you.
for the new money of FY22.
Thank you.
Okay. Turn the page to the second half of the cash balances by fund report. You've got the building fund, construction fund, etc.
Mr. Martello,
Yes.
we've only got one.
I'm sorry, I'm reading from the PowerPoint.
Oh, on the,
Oh,
okay. I'm
yes.
sorry. We were on the cash balance sheet.
Yes.
Do you
And-
want to
and I'm
have,
sorry, it's one and the same. If you go down to the building fund on that one pager you were given, it's about midway through.
okay, and are you, okay, you've got it on the screen. Okay.
Yes.
All right.
So, as we flow down through, one item to note is the daycare operations. That balance is growing a little bit, which is a positive. As you recall, at the end of fiscal year 13, or through the latter part of the year, that fund was dwindling. But with the federal kickstart or federal opportunity, that balance is doing okay for fiscal year 22, as well as probably fiscal year 23. But that's something we're going to have to look at and just assess, monitor when we get to probably fiscal year 24.
And are we able to, right now, are we at capacity for as many kids as want to be in ETC, that we have staffing?
That is a great question, and I
Ms.
will let
Hogg
the
says no.
expert answer that question.
All right, Ms. Hogg's going to come up and talk to us. You'll have to wait till you get up there and they won't be able to hear you. I'm sorry. No worries.
Hi. We do not have enough staff to enroll all the students who want to. We are interviewing constantly and trying to take care of that, but we do have a waiting list.
About how many students do you know?
It varies, I would say 40 to 50, so probably 10 or 12 for each school.
For each school?
Mhm.
Okay. And how many employees do you hope to hire, or is it?
We need to hire at least 4, maybe more than that, because you dealing with quarantines and ratios of each group size and things like that. So just to make sure that we do not need to shut down unnecessarily. So we need to have some extra cushion so that we can cover absences.
All right.
And are you getting applicants for these jobs?
Somewhat,
Yeah.
yes. We are very searching. Yes, we are constantly. We probably had 7 interviews this week. So, yes.
And what is the criteria for ETC? Just so people.
Employees?
Uh-huh.
I'm sorry, my mask keeps on now.
That's okay.
High school diploma. They should probably have some experience dealing with children or child care. It's a plus if they have the CDA credential, which is a child care credential, but it's not required. And so just a desire to be helpful and work with children. And we train. We do some extensive training.
What is the hours that they work each day?
2 or 2:30 to 6 or 6:30. And they can work every day, or they can work 2 or 3 days a week.
Okay, so it might be an opportunity for some of our college students, if they have
Yes.
morning classes, that they could come in
Yes,
and
we've
work in
been
the
working with
afternoons.
Midway, and we've advertised, and we've had hiring fairs, and we are in the same boat that most other places are.
For sure. All right, thank you so much, Ms.
Thank
Hogg.
you.
Does anyone else have any questions?
I do have just a couple quick questions.
Okay.
Mr. Martello, can you explain, I see the special revenue fund is negative about 1.7 million. Can you just kind of explain that?
Okay, I'm sorry, let me clarify real quick. Are there any more questions for Ms. Hogg?
Oh,
Okay, all right. Thank you, Ms. Hogg.
Sure. Ms. Bringate, like in previous months, that is a federal funded, or that's federal. A lot of the dollars in that fund are federal, and that's reimbursed after the fact, after the expenditure. So you'll see that that fund appear negative for a balance from time to time based on it's refunded in the rears.
What kinds of expenses are included there?
Well, you've got all of your consolidated application, and that's 1, 2, 3, 4. You've got Title 6B, which is IDA, special
Yeah,
ed.
he's speaking about title now, Ms. Springate, okay? The Title 1s, 2, 3s.
Yes, Title 1 through 4. You've got Title 6B, which is IDA for special ed. You've got Title 6B preschool, which is special ed. You've got the first round of CARES. You've got ESSER 2. You've got ESSER 3. Anything regarding federal and or state grant. There's probably, as an estimate, at least 40 different programs and fund, or 40 different projects and different types of funding within that fund too.
That just seemed like a really large number compared to what we're used to seeing, so I wanted to check on that. How much of that do you think is the federal ESSER and CARES money?
It's all based off timing, Ms. Springate. We spent a good percentage of that ESSER 2, so it could be a portion of ESSER 2, could be Title 1, could IDAB. It's just a number of different dollar amounts or different projects for that fund.
Ms. Springate, did you have anything further on that?
Yeah, I would just, if you don't mind, if you could just kind of break that down a little bit. I mean, just like you could just email or something like that. I understand you might not have that exact figure tonight. And then my other question was about the debt service fund, which is negative $107,000. Could you just explain that one?
Yes, like in previous months, the money that comes in for the debt payment, it is receipted into the building fund, and then there's a corresponding transfer that occurs after the fact with that debt payment. And so that's why there's a negative.
All right, go ahead and move on then, Mr. Martello.
Okay. Turning the page to child nutrition, and then one more. Just to brag about Ms. Courtney and her team. I don't know if the board is aware in seeing in the media, other school districts are struggling to acquire different types of food or beverage and disposables. Ms. Quire has done a great job in terms of maintaining her menu and the menu options, and doing a great job in overcoming these obstacles due to labor shortages. In terms of the supply chain constraints, that's labor shortages, driver shortages, and project discontinuations across the country, and specifically Kentucky has hindered or put an impact on the supply chain. And so she's still continuing to offer everything that's on her menu that was pre-planned probably months ago, and she's doing a great job to overcome those obstacles.
Even to the point that I think she's having to make some things from scratch, isn't she, Mr. Martello?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, she's doing a really good job.
So if you turn the page.
We'll interject real quickly and also echo the thank you from you and Mr. Adkins to Ms. Quire and all of our food service workers. We're very blessed to have them,
Yes.
and they work hard for our students every day.
Yes. And so these are, if you turn the page, just an itemization, just the common things, like Mr. Atkins alluded to. Some of these things, or a number of these things, she's having to make from scratch, and it's not easy. And so that fresh product is a great thing, but she's pulling it off, and hasn't changed her menu options. Let's turn the page. The average daily participation. These were pretty significant numbers, which is a great thing in terms of the participation both in breakfast and lunch. in the last 3 years, and you can see the jump in 21. Okay. And I'm sure it's a two-pronged approach in terms of the opportunity for kids to have a quality meal with the COVID pandemic, as well as the great offering that the staff put out there in terms of selection for the kids, being excited about those meals. Okay. If you turn the page, she wanted to make sure I highlighted the middle school's participation. They are serving nearly 800 breakfasts daily. That is great in terms of student achievement. Like we all know, that has an impact in terms of a child that doesn't go hungry in terms of impact during the course of the school day. And she's got there noted Miss Onan and her staff are doing a great job offering that second chance breakfast. And they've got a 71% participation rate, which is great. So we're really proud of Miss Onan and her staff at the school.
For sure. The kids love the second chance breakfast.
Yes. Okay, let's go ahead and turn the page. And then one more. We're going to look at the maintenance and facilities. This is just a highlight. These are the tables, and we're not discarding them. We actually had to purchase another storage unit at our district warehouse. And so those were the existing tables based on at Northside. Just an example that we bought with trying to do that initiative in the spring and late summer, trying to do the social distancing and the spacing with the COVID pandemic. So we had tables at Northside and a few of the other elementary schools. And so trying to do the spacing, we have replaced those tables with new desks. And so those tables have now been moved off-site to the maintenance building. And if you'll flip the slide, here are the new desks. The chairs are not new, but the desks are. And that's just a picture of what has come in and the team at Northside getting those dispersed, as well as the maintenance department. So proud of that work and trying to enable the social distancing. And those tables will not go to waste. We are maintaining them in case they need to be used at somewhere or at another location in the district. Okay. Turning the page. The monthly project status for the high school. If you turn it again, one more. This is a summary, just a real quick summary. Ross Harrent did a great job the other night in doing a cumulative since July of all of the meetings. So this is just a snapshot of those same meetings that were itemized a few weeks ago. But we've been busy. You can see that's just six of the main meetings that we've had in the different areas, with all the different key stakeholders that have attended, trying to go forward and go farther along in the project. So excited for that work and appreciative of all the individuals that attended those meetings. That's it for the monthly treasurer's report.
I would real quick like to touch on the culinary meeting with the architect. I had a conversation with Mr. David Horseman over at KDE, with the State Department, who oversees the CTE programs, and we had discussed the possibility of trying to find a little more room. So you and I had a meeting with the architects. We think we may have worked out another classroom that would be directly across the hall. So they would be just walk across the hall to the labs and those types of things. So we're hopeful, and we're waiting to hear back from the architects on that.
Yes. Appreciate that.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Martello.
Okay, thank you.
We will move into the consent agenda, Mr. Atkins.
Approved donation request, nothing really earth-shattering there. Kind of the same things that we see. But any donation is very well appreciated, and we are open to taking them. So anybody out there listening who wants to donate a couple $1 million, we're open. Approved fundraiser request, again, just your basic fundraisers. I think we have seen some of the calendar fundraisers, which I hadn't seen here yet, but have been seeing a lot back in the other end of the state. Basically, that's where a student places a calendar on and says, somebody sponsor me for this day, and if you pick the 15th, then you pay $15. So those are the types of things that we're seeing for our teams. Approved travel requests, we've talked about that. Grant request, again, nothing out of the ordinary. I think we have one hardship application, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Asher, and that information, I think, if it isn't available to you, then we can certainly have that discussion. We'll get that to you at some point. Approved shortened school days, shortened weeks for individual students. Unless you have some questions, that would probably need to be
Has that been on the agenda for you guys before?
No.
I didn't think it had. And that was one that I had a question about when I was a new board member. It is a specific student or several students that for health conditions or different limiting factors have applied for a shortened day, and it goes through several levels of approval and then comes to us just for board approval. But it is well vetted and researched.
And it is typically cited, well, no, it's always cited in their individual learning plan,
Right.
Individual educational plan.
Yeah,
And then
I
we
think the
approve.
information was uploaded for us
Yes.
too. Yeah.
Yep.
Approve MOA with Fayette County Public Schools and Locust Trace. Again, that's some CTE course work that we're doing over there with those folks. And just it's the same, from what I can gather, it's the same MOA as every year.
Yep.
Approved 2021-22 Certified Evaluation Appeals Committee. The committee, did we ever get a committee put together, Ms. Jones? Okay.
Pamela Hutchison and Marty Daisy Alden.
Okay, sounds good.
And so this is for what, reviewing HR type issues for appeals?
It would be personnel evaluations. They would ask to appeal that.
Okay.
Has that, to your knowledge, has that ever been?
Not in my 8 years here. We've never had to use it, but
That's
it's by
great.
law we have it. So.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
What Dr. Jones said is that in her 8 years here at Woodford County, we've not ever had to use this. An appeal has never been done, but it's required by statute for our virtual members. All
Okay,
right.
that's the consent agenda.
All right. Moving on to the regular agenda.
Accept notification of personnel matters. Those are just the basic personnel actions that have been taken since the last meeting. Does Mr. Martello say that, or do I say that? It has his name at the end of it. I'll say it, but you stay over there, I'll say it. Accept notification of payment of bills. Approve the meeting minutes of the August 23rd, 2021, August 24th, 2021, and September 2nd, 2021 board meeting, all in attendance. Approve meeting minutes of the August 16th, 2021 board meeting. Ms. Springate was absent. Approve creation of preschool position. Is there any question about that?
I'm assuming it's
Can
just
I take a question about that at this point? Can I open, is it okay for me to ask if there's a question about that position?
I would assume so, yeah.
Because if there is, Ms. Hogg is here to explain if,
Sure, she can explain what the
If we need
rationale
to.
is.
and I don't mean to put you on the spot, I just thought we would see if there were any questions.
It looks like it's a statutory obligation.
Yes, in preschool, there's a regulation that requires 2 staff members if you have more than 10 students. So when we're in a situation where there aren't any subs, we're out of compliance, it's a little bit, can be dangerous with some more behavior challenged children. So this person would help with that, and also help with interventions in some of our ELL kids.
All right. Very good. Thank you.
So can I ask a quick question on another agenda item that we passed, or?
Yeah, of course.
Actually, I didn't know if this, I didn't know what was
Yeah.
kosher.
And it's like it's my first board meeting, I couldn't remember if I could or
Me
not.
too.
Yeah, go
so-
ahead.
On the personnel matters, I did notice that there were a lot of bus drivers that we hired, which was great news
We
on
had
there.
hired, yes.
So I was just wondering where that puts us as far as need for bus drivers and really all the other positions that I know we've been struggling for.
We have 2 subs that we have hired recently that will be bus drivers, and we have 2 bus drivers that we have currently hired. However, we've lost 2 bus drivers. So we're really, the 2 subs that will work their way into being a full-time driver will really help us. That is, if we can keep everybody in place. What we're seeing, though, we are seeing our bus routes, and we knew that it would happen, becoming more efficient and kids getting home quicker. It was just ironing out those first few days. So we met again today with transportation, and we're in the process of hopefully next year at our first opening day that we'll be a little more efficient.
Okay, good. That's good news.
If I may add one thing, but in terms of a fleet manpower that we really would like to have, you're looking at least 10 more bus drivers.
Okay.
So that's, Ms. Penn is doing a great job, just keep, getting the kids home. But in an ideal situation, we're about 10 short.
So does that mean we're still recruiting and could
Oh,
hire?
absolutely.
Open,
Okay.
wide open,
All right.
yeah. And I'll say this, our bus drivers are doing a great job.
Yeah.
I mean, they are just tireless about what they're doing for our kids. So can't say enough about that entire department. Let me see, where did I leave off? Okay, approved temporary COVID sick leave. Districts around us have done that. And if you look at it, it's to approve 10 extra days for fully vaccinated employees as long as it's tied to COVID. And we're asking for that approval.
So can we get some input from Mr. Chenoweth on that as far as the restriction on the offering of it?
Yes. Grant, are you able to speak to that now, or do you need to do? Garrett, did we run that? We've consulted Grant with that prior to.
Yes, I figured.
What was your specific question, Ms. McHale?
Just can you talk for a minute about maybe the restriction on who is eligible for it and just the restriction
Do you
on
mean
it.
as far as vaccinated
Yes,
employees? Okay.
yes.
There is, I can't say that I know percentages, but many districts that are adopting this are doing the vaccinated or exempt employees being the only ones that are eligible for this extra leave. There are some districts who are making it available to all employees without regard to vaccination status. There doesn't really seem to be any restriction as to which one of those you choose. It's truly a board policy decision. The ones that are requiring the vaccination status are essentially copycatting off of the State Board of Education quarantine leave regulation that the governor asked the state board to add a vaccination requirement into that regulation. So lots of boards are just copying that to further incentivize employees getting vaccinated.
Thank you.
All right. Are there any other questions?
Do we know what our current vaccination rate is? Can we even talk about that?
Kelly, do
Mr.
we know
Wells,
what
or-
our staff vaccination rate is?
We had over 400 employees vaccinated in the spring that we know of. Of course, there's no requirement that they have to go through our health department or our clinic. So there could be additional employees as well that are vaccinated. But I would say we have a very high percentage.
Somewhere along the line, I was thinking 75 to 78% is what I was told at one point. Now, I do know that Angel and I have pursued the number of employees we have, and it's low 7s. So that would make sense then, if in the spring where we were over 400, that we would, probably in that neighborhood of 75 to 80% now.
Kelly, did you have something you wanted to add, or no? Okay.
And
All
that's
right.
That's a really good question, Ms. McKell.
And probably something we can follow up on if you would like to know.
I'd be curious. Yeah.
I would imagine we could do an employee survey, Mr. Wells.
And I'll tell you, the health department's been putting the tables out every morning, and those are, again, that gives us the number of vaccinated individuals from 12 to, correct me wherever I'm,
12 to
to 18 or whatever,
and then 18 and over.
And then it has the vaccination rate of the 8, and I think the student rate would be somewhere in the neighborhood, I think it was 48 to 49% this morning, if I'm not mistaken.
Which is a big growth since we started. I think we were at 21% when Ms. Prather came to our meeting a few months ago, so that's a big climb.
And if you'll look, there are students that are partially vaccinated.
Sure.
Yeah, that are still, that are pending getting that second dose. Yes.
All right, any further questions on that? All right, the next item is approving the amendment to the salary schedule.
Oh, I skipped that
We're gonna skip.
one. I did, nope, I
Oh,
skipped.
nope, you're good. It was the next one after the.
It is, that is our lacrosse stipends, our robotics stipend, and then a work-based learning coach to be paid out of federal funds at the high school. So that is how they're choosing to spend some of their ESSER monies here at the high school.
Okay, so their site-based has then adopted the program and then made the choice
Am I
to
correct
allocate
with
the
that,
funds that way?
They have adopted the program and ready to move forward, but based on board approval.
Yeah, the program already existed. It is to better coordinate, coach as it's called, keep track of that, support the students who are involved.
Okay, for each of those programs?
Sorry?
For each of those programs?
Just for the work-based learning program.
Okay, and the robotics?
For the robotics, what we have going on there is we have that great program that's being paid, the stipend at the 4 elementaries. But there's actually been the program going on at the high school as well. So it's more of an equity issue to make sure that we're appropriately paying that teacher, providing that service to those kids at the high school.
Okay.
And then yes.
And bear
Go
in
ahead.
mind that our robotics program is really a big, not a foot in the door, but a jump through the door to our STEM and STEAM activities. So that's to me, that's a very important program right now that we have in place.
It's a program on the grow across the state and
Absolutely.
the country for sure.
Yes.
All right.
I have a question. Under the background information, it says that the changes include the following: 21-22 salary schedule revisions, 8 total. What is that?
So that is a total. That's a matching what was approved per previously in this fiscal year to make sure the salary schedule that was voted on, the salary schedule with the adoption of lacrosse now reflects those appropriate stipends for both a head coach at the girls and boys level at the middle school, as well as a corresponding assistant, and then the sister to that at the high school, a head lacrosse coach, boys and girls, and an assistant for both the genders.
Okay, and so just with the ones that are listed out there, that's the only change to the 8-page document? There are no other changes?
The changes are noted in the background, and then the ones that we discussed are reflected on the actual salary schedule.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure there weren't any other salary adjustment changes in there. It was all the same other than just the few that were noted specifically. And the total estimated cost of that was $32,000?
Yes, ma'am. And
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
All right, if there are no further questions on that, we will move on to item H.
Approve authorization for superintendent to use temporary remote instruction days. The temporary remote instruction days, or TRIs, what KDE calls them. Basically, those were the 20 extra virtual days or NTI days that we were allocated through Senate Bill 1. And the way they are intended to be used is if you cannot shut down the entire district with these days. Okay, you can only shut down a class, maybe a grade level, or a school. For instance, I'll give you an example. Fayette County shut down one of their schools for 3 days. So now they have 17 TRI days left. So there's 20 for the entire district. That means, again, now they have 17 left. They can go to another school if they had issues and shut it down for 2 more. They'd have 15 more. Ideally, we don't plan on using any of those. However, this thing could arise quickly. It could be Kelly Garrett call me and tell me that we have 16 students at Northside that have tested positive. Well, that's a large number of students. Probably to reduce any further spread, we may use a couple of TRI days, especially if we were near the weekend. But it's to limit that spread or to even with staff, if you were to have a large amount of staff that couldn't make it to work that day, then we may have to use a day or two just to get through that period with that school. But it cannot be used for an entire district. It can be used for even multiple schools, but the entire district cannot be shut down. And the reason I'm asking for this authorization is because it's something that could happen, in the blink of an eye.
Sure.
I could get that call. We could get the call from the health department. So that's where that's at.
Well, I definitely appreciate Senate Bill 1 and having this flexibility. Would you be putting out some sort of a document that would kind of outline when and how you would be using these TRI days, just so that we could be clear on when that might occur, and also the public could be clear?
Sure. We can do that. I don't know that we can give you solid guidelines, as there's so many variables, but we could give examples. Is that okay?
Yeah, I just think the more information that you can share about when this might occur, if it's at 15%, if it's at 20%, just some guidance and guidelines so people know what to expect. And then also, we as a board know what we're approving. I just think that would be helpful.
Okay.
And I appreciate that. I do think, though, this falls in line with the same discretion that we found was best given to the superintendent last year, that the board we can't mobilize and approve enough or often enough to kind of meet the challenges of COVID where they are. So I would think that we would stay, committed to allowing Mr. Adkins and the cabinet to kind of be the more reactive decision maker on this item.
And our goal is to certainly not use any of them, because I'll go back to, we serve our children better in a classroom. When we can see them in person, face to face, we serve our students better. So our goal is to never use any of these. And the way things are looking, again, I saw somebody peck on the table.
Sir, but we'll
The way
do
things
it.
are looking, we look really good right now, because I'm not going to say we're trending downward. But as I look at Woodford County's health department releases, you'll notice the numbers do appear to be a little smaller than they were at least 2 weeks. So hopefully we can see some downward trend. But again, we hope not to use them at all.
And I do think it's the nature of Senate Bill 1 is very limiting for local control on this matter specifically. It was very much a notion of, we support local control except with these limitations that we're going to dictate.
I will say, I think the goal of Senate Bill 1 was to get us to the regular session in February or January, whenever the regular session starts. It's sometime in the spring. But I do believe that's the goal of Senate Bill 1, and they may make more additions to what they have done in the regular session.
Sure. So, Ms. Springate, I guess to your request of a specific matrix, would you be okay with, I think, like Mr. Adkins said, it's going to be difficult to make a specific matrix that says if X, then Y. But in lieu of that specificity, just kind of over communicating with parents, with teachers, with the board, is that acceptable to you?
Yeah, what I'm looking for is just something so that anybody could understand when and if we might be using one of these days, when the TRI days might be utilized. So, just for example, we have, some policies and guidance and guidelines in place for when we do NTI days. Folks understand if this situation occurs, then it would be an NTI day. So just something so that there could be some communication, and also so that we can know what we're actually approving would be good. So I definitely don't think that, he has to list every single situation that could possibly ever occur between now and December 31st, but just something to give people a general idea of what these TRI days are, when they might be utilized, and that also gives us kind of an assurance of what we're actually approving. So, nothing crazy, just, trying to be transparent and informative to, to our staff, our students, and then also just to the board. So I do appreciate as much information as possible.
I think Mr. Gibson would like to speak to that a bit.
As somebody who's been a part of the NTI Day rollout for the last several years, the only guidance we get from the state is the amount of days we're allowed to use, which is 10, and then of course with this additional 20 based on the new guidelines. And on top of that, you can use them for health or safety reasons. And that's it. I mean, that's the extent of the guidelines. And then so it's up to the superintendent at that point to make the decision on when a health concern or when a safety concern is of a nature to call that kind of day. Outside of that, there's nothing else to provide to the public.
And I think, for most people, on comparisons, we obviously as a board don't assess road conditions when an NTI day is going to be used or anything like that. I understand the intent here, but the follow-through may just not be a practical one.
I think the one maybe really important thing to communicate to people would be, especially if you have kids in different schools, that, to your point, North Side may be shut down, but it's only North Side, so your middle schooler or your high schooler is still going to be in school. So maybe just some differentiation between what is NTI and what is a remote, what is it called? Temporary remote instruction, because there is some difference there.
And we can certainly put that on our website and have schools put it on their websites.
I think that would be helpful.
I think, like I said, over communication, if this becomes the situation that we're faced with. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the emergency declaration for the high school gym upper bleacher mezzanine structural repair. And Mr. Martello, would you like to present that?
And this is more going to be an informational item. We're going to have the actual documents a week from today is our goal. I know we've had a presentation by Ross Torrent in terms of the different options, just trying to assess in terms of the situation that's best suited for safety. And if you recall, we had 4 different options, and we've narrowed those down to 1 at this point, and working with the structural engineer, the architect, the CM as well. And so we're hoping to get to that point where we can have a formal emergency declaration, an adoption of the BG1, and then as well as an adoption of the owner-architect agreement, so we can look at going forward to provide that remedy. And there'll be more detail on Monday, a week from today, is our goal. They've had to do a lot of research, like Michael Hughes alluded to in the past, getting with the bleacher manufacturer, again, working with the structural engineer and assessing all those options, and we're hopefully getting to in terms of solution that we're going to put forth towards the board.
So,
and I do want to go ahead and speak to the issue that either option we choose, the gym will not be able to be used at its full capacity this year. So, what
can
did
you
they
all
say,
hear
March?
that okay?
Did they say March would be the earliest?
At the very earliest, and that's yes.
I will say I have huge reservations seeing this dollar amount. I mean, for our community, just to be completely transparent, the estimated cost of repairs for these bleachers is $250,000.
Yes.
And that is just way more than I had hoped it would be, way more than anyone can feel like is a good investment in that gym. Is there any, I mean, obviously we have to make it safe. We have to make it usable because we're going to be here until we have a new school. But is there any insurance coverage? Is there any path to lowering this amount that we would pay?
We try to be proactive and assess the insurance part, and unfortunately, no, that's not an option there. And so we've narrowed down from the 4 options to the 2, and we just feel like in terms of safety, these are the ones that we've gotten to that point. Unfortunately, it's just a very costly repair based on the safety need.
And obviously, we have to do the
Right.
safe thing.
There was another option. It was going to be probably 3 to 4 months longer. And the answer was fixed bleachers. And fixed bleachers mean you would not have that extra space at the top for the next 2 to 3 years while we are still in the old facility. So to me, that was, it was hard for me to see a set of bleachers that we couldn't push back for space purposes. And it was only going to be, well, what did they say, 150, 175, maybe even, they wasn't even sure.
Right.
But to get the bleachers was going to be 6 to 7 months from the time we ordered.
Right.
And are we repairing the existing bleachers and alleviating those pressure points, or are we replacing?
We are establishing the opportunity for those pressure points to be reinforced through the joints underneath. So when those pressure points do happen, it's in a safe measure. And so we can speak more in depth on Monday. I can have Mr. Hughes to come be here as well and speak to some of those questions.
If I'm not mistaken, the pressure points would now sit on top of either steel beams or concrete beams being supported by steel beams.
Okay. Does anyone else have any questions on that? All right. I think that probably covers through item K.
Yes, ma'am.
Unless you have anything you'd like to add.
Okay.
No? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Martello. The item L is approve an increase in hours for migrant education program assistant. Mr. Asher, do you want to do that one, or Mr. Adkins? Mr. Asher's coming.
So, I believe I wrote it up on the request to explain that migrant education program is a federally funded. It's Title I Part C, I believe. Essentially, we lost our assistant last school year, right at the end of the school year, so we posted the position, have yet to fill that since May.
And that was a part-time position, correct?
It was a part-time,
Yes.
I'm sorry, and still is posted as a part-time position. Our budget has increased. The funds that were allocated under Title I Part C have increased. So one of the recommendations from we have an area director, was to put it towards that assistant position to hopefully attract a qualified candidate. We did have one qualified candidate, but simply didn't want it as a part-time position. So our hope is to increase that and get a qualified candidate.
All right.
And we have the money in the budget.
Very good.
That's
Okay.
it.
Any questions for Mr. Asher? Okay. Thank you, sir. All right, Mr. Martello, you're back up.
Get my steps in tonight.
That's right.
Okay. Working budget, I'm presenting on that tonight. This is the third portion of a 3-part process. You should have a PowerPoint, and if you'll turn it to the second page, again, like we've had in previous meetings in January, we had the draft portion. In May, we had the tentative, and then now in September, we're having the working portion of this process that's by KDE guidelines and state statute. So turning the page to page 3, future unknowns. So this is just a broad statement. You know, sometimes we don't know those the unknown needs that occur for our kids to try to make sure that their learning environment is great every day. So some things do pop up that we have to buy, whether it be curriculum or an additional FTE in the classroom or things like that. So that's just a broad just in case of a need that may occur. Duration of COVID-19, like as we've seen in the last couple of years, we thought we were going to turn the table at the start of this fall or at the summer with the beginning of school, but as we saw with the 2 weeks prior to, we had to monitor and adjust. We're still doing that. So there could be a corresponding cost to those unknowns. The Board of Education's stance on taxes, we just recently adopted the tax rate to maintain to that 69.8 that we had as last year, but that is a piece of the budget regarding the revenue for this year and future years. The KDE state budget, the state in the spring adopted the opportunity to be funded for full-day kindergarten. That had a corresponding aspect or impact on our revenue in terms of paying for those additional 129 129 AADA dollars that you'll see further on in the presentation. So something we've just got to be cognizant of. When the legislature did that, that was only for 1 year. So we've got to monitor and adjust if they do not fund full-day kindergarten in future years. But we'll see that here in the coming months if that's going to happen or not. Facility needs, we just got done talking about the bleacher repair, the potential cost there at the high school, pretty significant. We've already repaired the roof at the high school above the special ed area. We could still have to put some additional dollars in that roof and monitor that piece or the roof in general in different areas. And just overall facility needs that may occur. And then this budget also reflects the opportunity for the ESSER funds and assisting the general fund. So those are one-time dollars, and we all know that. If you turn the page to page 4, you've got the pay schedule. We had a great thing this year where we adopted a 2% increase across the board for all employees, as well as giving the step increases. That's something we're always going to try to monitor and adjust and assess our salary schedule and be as competitive as possible. But that is a future unknown we've got to realize. Okay, and then the new high school with the potential there. Okay, turning the page to page 5. This budget is set. This is the second year where we are funded off the 18-19 AADA numbers. You'll see the only rise from the previous year, which was 3590, which is the AADA for 18-19. The only rise is only due to the additional half-day kindergarten funding that created 129 AADA. And then the property assessment growth, just for the property assessment, roughly a 4.5% increase. If you turn the page to page 6, this is just a summary. We're nearly 31 million for the general revenue fund by itself. The special revenue fund, which is Fund 2, is about 4.1 million, nearly 4.2. The district and school activity funds, I've reduced those this year to be cautious, and that can be adjusted at any point. But I wanted to make sure that we're still in a COVID year. We don't have that budget inflated just in case those additional activity funds, fundraisers, gate receipts, those types of things. If those don't come to light, I want to make sure that we're staying within budget in those different activity programs so we don't have anything to go in the hole. And so that's just a cautionary measure, and we can change the budget and adjust it in 3 weeks if we get additional dollars in a particular type of activity program or any of the activity programs. But that's just to make sure that we're conservative there and monitor with the actual true dollars that come in. Food service, nearly 2.8 estimated. Enterprise Daycare, nearly 600,000. Again, that fluctuates based on the participation and the amount of kids that we can have in a classroom. And then the community ed program at 32,000. Turning the page to page 7, the capital outlay, and that alludes to the dollars that Ms. Bradley was asking about earlier, where 20% of that, 80% is dedicated towards the potential on the debt financing, it's already been dedicated, and 20% to the remainder of other projects. Okay. That's driven by the $100 per AADA. It's simple, a simple calculation. You just multiply that AADA number by $100, and that's where that amount gets to. Okay. The building fund of new dollars, about a little bit over $3.4 million, and the debt service in terms of paying bonded debt, existing bonded debt, is at 2.6. So if we were to go forward on the high school, an estimated payment of $750,000 would be the first payment in July of 2022. Okay, and that's based off current timing. If there's a delay, then that potentially may delay the timing of that payment, but we would just have to monitor and adjust at that point.
And that is just interest? That would not be any principal?
That is just interest. Yes, ma'am.
And is that how all bonds are scheduled?
I don't want to speak out of turn on that. I know we work with FAA with Miss Mersick, and she's helping us on that piece, whether it's front end loaded or not. But I can get you some analysis on what other districts do. Absolutely.
Or just even, if that's how, I
Sure.
know obviously as a consumer,
Sure.
you pay interest first on your mortgage. It may be that all of them are scheduled that way, but maybe not. If you could just follow up
Absolutely.
and ask her.
Absolutely. Turning the page to page 8. Just a note, as we all know, the revenue is going to be more gracious this year in terms of that federal opportunity, allowing the kids in the district, whether they qualify or not, for a free reduced lunch, to have an opportunity for a meal. So that will impact the revenue in the Child Nutrition Fund, which is a good thing for that program. If you turn the page to page 9, the Enterprise Daycare, we've already touched on that a little bit in the cash balances by fund report. Just as a caution, when we get probably at the end of FY23 and into FY24, we really need to assess that and make sure we're assessing our rate structure and our fees that we're charging for the parents, and looking at those expenses and revenue. Technology fees, as we already talked about in the cash balance by fund, just something we need to monitor and assess our fees each year. We've done Mr. Gibson and his team have done some great things for distance learning with remote learning, but that has impacted in terms of that activity fund. With all the usage of these devices, things have broken, unfortunately, because they're going home, routinely. So just something we've got to make sure we monitor. Page 10, if you turn the slide. Significant factors. This budget is based off a staffing formula that we have adopted. Again, it includes the experience in the step increments. It includes a 2% across the board raise to the salary schedule. The classified retirement system, that went up from a little bit over 24% to nearly 27%. So we're having to absorb the cost there. The utility rate increase that we talked about in May. The insurance cost increase as well. With the premium rise, we had a significant claim with the water damage at the high school, as well as the water damage at Simmons or Southside? Simmons. And so that's, that comes into play in terms of our premium within recent years. The maintenance repair to the high school, and the addition of the lacrosse program that was adopted in July. Okay, turning the page to page 11 on the revenue. This is a working budget based off the 69.8 tax rate for real and personal property. You can see nearly 15.8 is for the combination of general property, delinquent taxes, and franchise, distilled spirits, motor vehicle, and you can read through. I don't have to read them all. Obviously your biggest revenue sources are your general property, delinquent, and franchise, and the combination of SEEK. You see that teeter-totter effect go. In terms of your local tax base, has a corresponding effect. There's other other calculations, but a big part of that is the influence with SEEK and vice versa. So at the end of the day, when you back out the on behalf, remember the on behalf is just an accounting entry. It's based off a GASB or an accounting standard. The revenue and the expenditures it's just an accounting entry. It's an offset. It's truly not cash. It's truly not an expense or revenue of cash. It's just an accounting entry. So when you back that out, you're a little bit north of 30.7 for a general fund budget on the revenue side. Turning the page 12, on the expenditure side, as we know, a majority of our expenses are tied to instruction. Teachers, paraprofessionals is in that instruction category, and you can just see the different groupings that we deal with based off function level and the different areas of the budget. And again, the on behalf, that is the sister part to it, the on behalf on the revenue side. So that's the same dollar amount. When you back the revenue out, you have your expenses a little bit shy of $30.7 million. So I'm showing the revenue and expenses when you combine those together as an increase of a little bit above $5,000 for the fiscal year by itself. Just the money or just the funds for revenue and expenses for the fiscal year by itself. Any questions?
Well, yes. I think first question would be, several board members have requested a budget session to sit down and look at all of our expenses.
Yes, ma'am.
When do you?
Mr. Atkins and I were talking about that. I'd really like to see at least 2 to 3 months of expenses on the salary piece. And so we were discussing the week of November 10th or 11th, somewhere around there.
Ms. Cooper, do you have our board schedule?
The 8th and the 15th.
We meet the 8th and the 15th. Can we plan to do it before the meeting on the 8th then?
Absolutely.
And we'll set this budget session up for an hour before the meeting starts. And if we need to do another one the following week to cover everything, we can
Absolutely.
plan to do that. Does that work for everyone?
5 o'clock on November 8th.
Yeah,
Ms. Glass, does that work for you?
The 8 to 5.
Yes. Ms. Springate, does that work for you? Okay. And Ms. Richardson had to leave the meeting, but since it's a regularly scheduled meeting, that should work, I would imagine.
I would just like to request, I know we talked a little bit at the tax meeting, and I had asked for that updated list of expenditures that Ms. Smith had prepared for us. I would hope that we could have that by before the budget session, so we could kind of look over that in preparation. And I did have an ask for that. Right now, it only has one column, and it kind of just explains what the expense is. I wanted to see if you could add a column for ESSER 2 and for ESSER 3 so that we as board members can have a sense of what general fund dollars are being used to cover, or ESSER dollars are being used to cover general fund expenses, so that we could, when we look at that list, we would be able to easily tell, this is going to be reverting back as a general fund expense when the ESSER dollars end.
But it may necessarily not be. The ESSER dollars will give us an opportunity to look at the budget to see where cuts need to be made. So it may necessarily not revert back to the general fund.
Well, I guess what I'm asking for is an example is in May, we approved the ESSER 2 spending plan. So in updating this document that Ms. Smith gave us, what I'm asking is that you would have a column that is labeled ESSER 2 and a column that is labeled ESSER 3. So for instance, you would take the summer school expense, and instead of coding it out of general fund, since we used ESSER, that would be under the ESSER 2 column. I'm just trying to get a sense of what is being covered, and then what we're going to have to cover when the ESSER funds kind of go away. So I'm just trying to get a sense of that in my head, and I don't know if other board members would like to kind of have an idea about that also, but I think it's something important for future planning, and so that's what I'm asking.
I think what Mr. Adkins was saying is that I'm sure that we can get that information, but expenses that we've had in the past may not be indicative of those in the future if there are budget cuts that are made.
But I do think it's a reasonable request to understand
To
where those
see
extra
where it's been
dollars
paid
are
from.
going.
I agree.
Yep, absolutely.
All right, are there any other questions?
The only question that I had was, we have talked several times about having a finance committee established, not just a budget meeting, but an actual finance committee that would meet on a regular cadence. And looking at the budget, I do get really concerned about not just this I'm fine with this coming year. It looks like we're in good shape. I know we've got the ESSER funds. The next few years are going to be really critical for us to understand before they happen from an expense perspective. For example, $750,000 interest only in July. We're going to have to start talking about how we start to raise those funds, and if something needs to be cut to raise those, to be able to cover those expenses.
And I have reached out to several districts to try to get an idea of how to put together a budget committee, and none of them have a budget
So let's
committee.
just make up our own.
Well, we can.
Yeah.
We can do that.
But I do get very concerned about the medium-term financials for the school district and how we're going to pay for all of this.
Right.
So,
Would you want to work with Mr. Adkins and in the next week or so and kind of bring a concept
sure.
for next week of
With
what
Mr. Martello.
and Mr. Martello, I'm sorry.
Ms. McHale, I hope you don't take this the wrong way, but every superintendent I asked about a budget committee said, yeah, that's me. So, I mean, but I'm open-minded to anything.
I just think we're in a unique position right now with what the needs of the district and our tax position, frankly. So it does concern me.
Yes. And I'm hoping that our meeting in November will help with that as well. Will help us to hopefully to better understand. And again, I would still love to have Kelly Merritt come to us and give us that, because again, KDU won't let you bond yourself into a bad situation. You and I have discussed that.
We have.
You
You
know
still
more
have
about
to pay
accounting.
for it.
You know more
So,
about
yep.
accounting than I do. I promise you that.
Yep.
And as we look at, Mr. Martello and I even discussed, from my mind, as we looked at the building funds, capital outlays, the restricted monies, those types of things. This was for me. We do have the money to go ahead and pay that $750,000 initial payment, but the rest of it, So I agree.
Yeah, I think it would help with some of the comments that we heard at the tax hearing. I think it would just help some of those conversations as they have to happen.
Right.
And I think the more we can get ahead of it, the better for everybody in the community.
What do you mean, Ms. McHale, as far as our tax position, when you said looking at that?
Yep, so we took a flat tax this year, right? And we have this interest payment coming up, and surely at some point there's going to be principal added to that, right? So you either have to reduce your expenses to cover that, or you have to increase your revenue to cover that payment, right? So, and to build up to the point that we could increase revenue or figure out what expenses to cut is going to be a really difficult conversation either way it goes. So I just think starting out that discussion today, understanding these are how the payments are going to fall. This is what we expect from a salary perspective, for raises and step increases, things like that. General building maintenance, these are some things that we know we're going to have to do, repair the stairs, repair the roof. what does that do to the total expense of running this school district?
Sure, yeah,
And
I
then-
understood
yeah.
the expense part,
Yeah,
and
and then-
understand your.
Right, and then from there, do we cut somewhere else or do we increase revenue? I think those are two really important questions.
Yeah.
All right,
And I will say this, and we discussed in cabinet this morning, that every district that I have been involved with, from Pike County to Floyd County, we have, when there's been a need for students, again, let's say that our high school parking lot needs 100 more parking spots at a cost of $125,000. Well, if we had that in our general fund or our contingency, we spent that on the students because there was a need. I know we've got a really strong carry forward here. Nobody wants to get into the middle of that and start taking it. But sometimes we do have needs for our kids. There's, well, I won't get into it. I'm looking at spending a little bit of money here on some kids here soon. So, and I'll explain that to you guys before I ever do it. But I do believe we need to spend our money on our kids as we move through this, through this fiscal year, or through every fiscal year for that matter. I know Title I folks are told to spend this year's money on this year's kids. IDEA folks, same thing. So it's just, it's things sometimes that we have to do, and I agree. I'm 100% about getting this budget fixed. This should give me a year to look at some things where we can make some changes. And with that being said, I hope to bring a stronger budget to you next fall. Stronger than we're seeing now. Okay.
very good.
If I could just interject, I just want to thank Ms. McHale for her really just laser focus on budget and budgeting issues, because really and truly, the board has to understand the consequences of our actions. We have to be able to look at balance sheets, at revenue, at income, and really understand the consequences of our actions. It's not just a number it affects when you take from general fund to try to build this way. As far as I understand, no other high school in Kentucky has ever been built just using general fund and capital outlay dollars. And again, I think KDE will absolutely allow you to bond. They're not going to tell you if it's a good idea. They'll just tell you if that's something that you could afford. Well, we maybe could afford it, but at what cost? Does that mean we have to adjust our staffing formula and have 30 students per classroom or 28 or 29 students per classroom? Does that mean we have to get rid of our full day, our full staff for art, music, PE at all the elementaries? Does that mean that we have to get rid of our SROs? You just kind of have to be able to look at what the costs and the consequences of using general fund dollars are. And you have to also look at what other needs we might have. We certainly have a roof that is about 10 years overdue for a full replacement at the high school. Those roofs don't last, maybe 20 years if you're lucky. That one is 26, 27 years old. The bleachers are another prime example. We have to spend our capital outlay dollars that we get from the state on repairs and on maintenance and on our facilities. And even if and when we do get a new high school, when you look at our facilities plan, we are not getting rid of the old high school. We are not then going to be able to demolish the old high school. We still are going to have a lot of repairs, a lot of maintenance, and different uses planned for that building. So I definitely think Ms. McHale is absolutely on target saying, we as a board, the buck stops with us. We have to understand our consequences. We have to understand what our decisions mean. And it's really about 3 years overdue for us to sit down and have these kinds of discussions about what using general fund dollars to build a facility means. So I definitely applaud and appreciate that, and I'll look forward to that session. Thank you.
And I certainly do appreciate Ms. McHale's concern as well, as I think we all have those. But Ms. Springate, I don't think there's an individual in this room that would tell you that building a new high school is not what's best for our kids. I don't think anybody could sit here and look me in the eye and tell me that building this high school is not what's best for kids.
Oh, I
Whether
definitely
it takes
agree.
general fund dollars to do it or not,
want the
I really
new
don't think anybody could look me in the eye and tell me that our kids are better off in the situation they're in right now.
And again, I agree that we need a new high school. We just have to be able to fund one. If getting a new building means we have to cut staff, then we need to be honest and upfront and have those discussions. If getting a new building means that we don't have any arts programming or any athletic facilities, we need to be upfront and have those discussions. I absolutely want a new high school, and I think everybody in that room and in Woodford County wants a new high school. It's a matter of building the high school in a smart way, in a way that we can afford, and in a way that's not going to have consequences that are detrimental to the education of our students in the future. And so all I'm saying is that we need to have those discussions, and I applaud Ms. McHale for continuing to bring it up month after month after month, because it really is a conversation that's long overdue. So thank you again, Ms. McHale.
Moving on. Going back to the planning meeting, item A under discussion items is an item that I added. After last week, the incident that happened, thank you, Mr. Martello, I'm sorry. The incident that happened at Anderson County's school board meeting, and then also Commissioner Glass on one of his webinars had discussed the need for superintendents and boards to have discussions about the safety at their board meetings. I did want to bring this up and talk as a board about it. As I mentioned in my email to the board, I requested that one of our SROs be here tonight. I think that we have to be cognizant of the heated nature of things in our society right now. I think we need to be aware that we have a student here with us and our staff that are here with us, and make sure that we're providing the safest possible environment for meetings that we can. So my inclination to that end would be that we have an SRO at each of our meetings going forward. We can go around. Ms. McHale, your thoughts?
I agree 100%.
All right, Ms. Glass?
I agree. I think it's never a wrong time to be more prepared, be precautious.
All right, Ms. Springate?
What is there a cost associated with that?
Mr. Wells?
The SRO works for us. So yeah, we would either have to pay him overtime or compensate him some way for his time, certainly.
They're contracted for 40 hours a week, so anything above their typical contract, we'd either have to adjust their schedule so they weren't in the school during the day, which we don't want.
Right.
Or pay the overtime for attending.
Mr. Wells' answer was that our SROs are contracted for 40 hours a week. So we would either have to adjust their schedule in the school, which is not what we want, or pay them overtime.
Okay, and I guess my other question is, if the public is not permitted at our meetings, why would we need an SRO?
I don't think that there's anything stopping anyone from walking in the front door of this high school right now.
So the public is now permitted to come to our meetings?
The building is open.
The building is open.
I think she's
Correct, but we're talking about having an SRO in our meetings. And so I guess my question is, would this start once we open the meetings back up to the public?
That would not be my intention, no. I would say that we do it going forward. I think that, I understand your point about thinking that the public isn't here, so there's not a risk, but what I'm saying is there's nothing stopping someone from coming in except that a public notice that this meeting isn't open. And the people that are reading on how the meeting types that we're holding are not the people that I'm necessarily concerned about being aggressive or violent.
Okay, and I guess my other question is, as I understand it, the incident in Anderson County seemed to just be a misunderstanding from what, and again, I just don't, I don't know the intimate details, but just that the person assumed that the board office was not a school and that it was okay to have his legal carry concealed weapon with him. And so once they informed him it wasn't, that he returned it and followed their rules and their instructions and everything. So I'm hoping that that was just kind of a misunderstanding. with the rules. And so I guess probably it might be a good idea for us to kind of reiterate those rules. I know we have signage. Do we have signage at the board office also? I know we have it at all the schools, but at the board office, do we have that sort of signage also?
Yes, we do.
Okay, so there's something when you pull into the parking lot that says, you know, no weapons on premises or just on the building?
I believe it's on the door, on the glass siding on each side of the door. And again,
Okay. The same signage we have at schools?
we're not sure that it's the exact same.
Okay,
But-
well, I definitely think we need to make sure that we're doing that, just, you know, because like I said, it seemed like it may have been just a misunderstanding.
Intent is not just to be reactive to that incident in Anderson County. It's to have the safest meeting environment that we can going forward. And obviously, you'll have the opportunity to vote if we decide to enact this policy next week. Is there any other comment on this? All right, we will move on to the KDE Employee Vaccination Incentive.
Yes, KDE has offered an incentive for all employees, not just teachers, but bus drivers, cooks, everyone that's vaccinated or will be vaccinated. And correct me if I'm wrong, Garrett, but is it by December 1st? By December, they've offered a $100 incentive. Now, they are challenging districts to match that, that's why Angel and I have been looking for the number of employees. That would be substitutes, active substitutes, everyone included, okay? They're going to get this $100. And like I said, they challenged each board to match that. Some boards are, some boards aren't, because they gave a stipend last year. From what I can understand, this board did give a stipend last year. So I would think anything extra would be awesome. But again, we've given a stipend already. But I did just want to update you on what this is. And each employee that is vaccinated will still get the $100. We'll pay that. KDE will reimburse us.
And it doesn't matter when they got vaccinated, if they're vaccinated on that date?
As long as they're
Okay.
vaccinated, yes ma'am, or and get vaccinated by somewhere in December. I think it's the 1st, but we'll have specifics exactly.
So our employees who were vaccinated last year still are
Would
eligible?
get it,
Okay.
yes ma'am. Yes ma'am. So, and again, that's not, I don't think this is just discussion. This is not a voting item for tonight or anything. I just wanted to discuss that with you and make you aware.
And you're
Make the
saying
board
KDE
aware.
is doing this?
Yes.
So
It's an
they
incentive
will
for
get it from
KDE.
KDE. So
Yeah.
the question for us is whether or not we're going to match it.
If you want to add something, maybe not even a match or match, however you guys
Yeah.
would like to handle it. But again, bear in mind, some districts are not, and from what I've been told, they feel as though because of the stipend they had given, that they didn't feel compelled to.
Hopefully they're not impaled.
Hopefully they're not
That was a
impaled,
big
yeah.
needle, but geez.
That's why they didn't feel compelled to match. But again, that's something I wanted to make you guys aware of. That is that's happening. The $100 is happening. I did hear one, if I'm not mistaken, a district voted not to do that, and I couldn't understand why you wouldn't at least vote for the 100.
So we do have to vote for the 100 from KDE.
From what I
Okay.
can gather, there was a district that voted against that.
And will you and Angel be able to follow up with us, the specific numbers, like if we were
I think
to
we got
get
'em.
the additional?
We're real close, aren't we?
I did a munis report and broke it down by certified, classified, paraprofessional, subs, etc.
I think worst case scenario, if we were to match Angel, would have been about $80,000
Somewhere around 700.
if we were to match,
With
because,
subs. Now, keep in mind, it's active subs,
yeah.
so you have to be active.
If you haven't worked for us this year, then you're not active. If you probably haven't worked for us in the last month, 3 weeks, you're not active. So, yeah, we have that many employees.
Okay, well, that's something.
Jeff, did you have something to add?
We probably want to, and we'll have to follow up on the specifics, but we've got to be concrete on when we have a certain day, probably active as a certain day or a specific day. Otherwise, for payroll and my folks, it's going to be a nightmare. So we have to be concrete on those individuals that would qualify on a specific day. It would be my recommendation.
Yeah, but as Ms. McHale said, the $100 is KDE's doing that. That's happening.
That's great.
Yeah.
All right. Mr. Atkins, is there a need for an executive session?
No, ma'am.
Then I would just say a huge congratulations to our football team on a very fun win. We'll kind of end this on a more positive note. Also to our band, who had a very successful competition. Our boys and girls soccer teams are both having great seasons.
I don't know if I'm just good luck or they're really that good. Because every time I go, I've never seen them lose. So that's awesome. Yeah.
I will say.
So did I see that the high school, the football team is number 1 now?
We
in
are
the
ranked
division.
number 1.
RPI rankings, in 5A.
In 5A, yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
And I don't know if everyone had a chance to go out to the game Friday night.
It was great.
A friend here in town said that she thought that was the most people, and Mr. Gibson, you could probably weigh in on this. She thought that was the most people that she had seen at a Woodford County game since Tim Couch came and played.
Okay, you put the caveat in, because the largest crowd I have seen there was the Tim Couch game against Leslie County years ago. But the one Friday night was fairly close, and it was had a lot of intensity and a lot of folks in the stands.
It was a lot of fun.
It was a lot of fun. It was a close game, back and forth. The kids were great. I had a chance to get down with the kids for just a minute, so it was great. One other thing that we can't forget is we had our Woodford County High School Hall of Fame class of 2020
absolutely.
Friday night as well. And I'll tell you what, I mean, it's just when I spoke to the group, I said, when I did research and I saw all the influence here in Woodford County had across central Kentucky, I can see why now. You guys are the reason. I mean, we have one gentleman that had a MD, a DMD, a laser surgeon. I mean, I can't even tell you. It was amazing to see what our people can do.
For sure. And I think we have lots of things that we have to do as a board that are contentious and stressful, but I also think it's nice to have positive things at our meeting that we can share, and I think that's a fun way to close and end things on a positive note. Ms. Schrock, is there anything you'd like to add?
The girls' golf team is undefeated.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Great. I would like to say real quick that with all the positive things going on in our schools, I want to challenge the community. I want to challenge everybody in Woodford County to come out and support these kids. Come out. Let's all come together behind this group of kids. Not just this group. We've got groups for years to come that are being successful at the middle school level. There are JV teams that are being successful. So let's all unite behind these athletes, these student athletes, and behind these schools, and support our schools. You know, that's one thing we all have in common. Is you've got to love children, and you got to love seeing smiles on kids' faces. So let's all get together on that.
For sure. All right. Thank you all very much for coming tonight. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
There's a motion by Ms. McHale. Is there a second?
I'll second.
There's a second by Ms. Glass. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion passes 4-0.
I had a great video today over at